In this video, we're going to take a look at installing and working with the Network Access Manager as part of the AnyConnect suite. Let's begin. When it comes down to 802.1x supplicants, you and I have a boatload of choices. We can use the native supplicants that are built into our operating systems, or we can use third parties. One of those third-party supplicants is called the Network Access Manager. Unfortunately, the acronym of NAM has been used a couple of times in the Cisco space, but here we're talking about this 802.1x component of the AnyConnect client. Now, traditionally, AnyConnect would be used if we want to build a VPN tunnel. For example, here's the internet. Here we have Bob out here in cyberspace. He's connected via DSL or cable modem to the internet, and he wants to build a VPN connection to a head-end device. Maybe there's an ASA acting as the head-end VPN device, and then Bob uses the AnyConnect client to build that VPN tunnel from his computer over to the ASA, which gives him access into the network. So in this video, you and I are going to leverage the .1x supplicant portion of the AnyConnect, which is called the Network Access Manager. And here's what you and I are going to do. We're going to take a look at how we'd install Network Access Manager to get up and running. And then within Network Access Manager, you and I have some options of setting up the details for how we're going to use 802.1x. For example, are we using EAP fast? Are we using PEEP? Are we using certificates? Are we using passwords? So there's some basic configuration we can do with NAM itself. However, there is another tool called the Profile Editor. So I also want to take a moment and walk you through how we can install the Profile Editor and use it to edit our profiles for Network Access Manager. If you and I are using digital certificates on this iServer, let's say we enrolled with the certificate authority, we downloaded and installed our own identity certificate on the iServer, if it's from a PKI certificate authority, it's possible that our clients may already trust that CA server and will be good to go. However, if this client, for whatever reason, doesn't trust the CA or can't validate the signature of the CA server who issued the ICE certificate, we can go ahead and train the client to go ahead and trust that CA. And we have a couple of options for getting our devices, our .1x supplicants, to trust a CA. Number one, we could have the operating system itself trust the CA by importing the digital certificate, the root certificate from that CA. That's one option. We also have the option by using Profile Editor to tell AnyConnect that it should go ahead and trust a specific CA by importing a certificate using the Profile Editor. And in this video, we get to take a look at each of those components. Our first step is to get the AnyConnect software. So I use this ISO. It's a download from Cisco's website. And that is an ISO image. And I simply burn that to a CD-ROM. And I put that CD-ROM in the drive of the client that I wanted to install the AnyConnect on, and I ran setup. Of course, another option would be to put those files on a network share that's reachable by that client and install them that way. So at the moment, that CD is in the CD-ROM drive of this computer, so I'll go to the D drive, and I simply double-clicked on Setup to launch it. Because we didn't need all these features, I simply deselected the Select All button, which deselected all the boxes, and I selected the AnyConnect VPN, and I also selected the AnyConnect Network Access Manager, because that's the one for this demonstration that we're really after. And then I clicked on Install Selected. And because I previously installed this about 30 minutes ago, we don't need to reinstall it again a second time. And after it was installed, it gave me a little icon right here. And depending on how your computer is set up, it may or may not hide that. You may need to go ahead and click on the Show Hidden Icons link to see the icon here. It just depends on how you personally have your computer set up. And this network component gives us the ability to manage our connectivity either to the wired network or to the wireless network. So if we use the drop down, it'll show us all of our options. Now we have this wired profile by default, and I have this class demo profile which I created. And a simple way to create a new profile is simply go to this option here for network details, click on it, and then from the drop down select Manage Networks. So as part of AnyConnect, we might have multiple modules installed. At the moment I have a VPN and network, and so if I simply click on either of those, they'll take me to that section respectively. So currently networks is highlighted. There's a default network called wired, which wants to use EAP fast by default. I've also got this entry for class demo, and the reason I did that was because our switch and the backend ICE server are all currently set up and working with protected EAP. And so when I set up the class demo entry, I told it, hey, I want to go ahead and use protected EAP. And then down here, from the drop down, I simply selected class demo. And initially, when I connected, it popped up saying, hey, here's a certificate that you can't verify. That was because the certificate on the ICE server is signed by a CA that this client doesn't currently trust. I should also point out that over the last couple days, between this video and the last one, I completely wiped it out. I formatted the drive, I reinstalled a brand new copy of Windows 7, and by default, this Windows 7 computer can't validate the certificate because it doesn't trust the CA that signed the certificate on the ICE server. So as a result, it popped up and said, hey, here's a certificate being presented. I can't validate it. Do you want to go ahead and proceed? And in our case, I said go ahead and proceed. The second thing it did, because we're using protected EAP and we're using a password for authentication, it popped up another box. It said, okay, what's your username and what's your password? So I put in Bob, I put in the password of NuggetBang23, which allowed us to authenticate with 802.1x. So now if we bring in our console to the switch and we do a command show authentication sessions for gig 0/7 and press enter, that'll show us our current status. So the username was Bob, that's because I manually put it in. The methods are mab and .1x, however, because there's a supplicant running and it's sending the EAP messages, and because .1x is preferred in our configuration over mab, the moment the port came up and it saw the 802.1x, it ran that, and that's the reason it didn't bother doing MAC authentication bypass. The other thing I did that I want to definitely tell you about is I changed the VLAN assignment for the port gig 0/7. Let's do a show, run, interface gig 0/7. So in the previous video is switch port access VLAN 10. I assigned it to VLAN 10. I put it back to VLAN 1 because I wanted to be able to use remote access with remote desktop so I could demo the client. And I'll tell you one thing that the AnyConnect client is really great at. It really is great at not allowing multiple connections to the same computer. And that's a good thing, because if this is Bob's computer and Bob is connected to the corporate network, with all the servers and resources that are available to Bob, if there's another connection coming in, like I was doing previously with wireless, the attacker could have access to Bob's computer, use Bob's computer as a pivot point to attack then into the network where Bob's computer is already trusted. And by default, Network Access Manager with managing multiple connections didn't allow that connectivity to happen. So what I chose to do, instead of using my RDP session through the wireless network, I got this successful authentication, which we currently have right now on Bob's computer, and then I'm doing RDP from a computer here over to Bob's PC. And that is the method that we're currently using to view Bob's desktop. So let me go ahead and save that configuration on the switch. And right here in AnyConnect, if we wanted to create a new entry, we could click on Add. We could specify whether it's going to be Wi-Fi or wired. In the event of wired, let's make a new connection for engineering. For security, we're going to specify we want to use 802.1x. There's also an option for MACsec here. So in our case, we'll do 802.1x. We can specify the method that we want to use. We have fast, we have tunneled TLS, and we have PEEP. So we choose the option that we want to use here. And regarding the authentication using PEEP, we have the option of password, certificate, or token. So if we have client-side certificates that we want to use, This is how we'd specify it. In the event of a password, if we clicked on OK, now we have this engineering entry. We'll go ahead and close the profile editor. And now from the drop down, we have the option of engineering as well. So if we selected that, that would do a few things. Number one, it would break our connectivity via RDP to this computer. But beyond that, it would also prompt us asking us if we want to trust this certificate, which it cannot on its own power verify. If we say yes to that, it'll then prompt us for the username and associated password for the authentication. We'd supply that, and then we'd go through the 802.1x authentication process. In our case, I am not going to select engineering because I want to maintain this connectivity. Even though it's true, we do have some basic ability to set up the details inside of Network Access Manager. It doesn't give us the depth and the breadth of the features that we have available to us. And as administrator, it's likely that you and I are going to be using a tool called the Profile Editor for AnyConnect. Now the Profile Editor, which is also downloadable from Cisco's site, and the version I have here is AnyConnect Profile Editor for Windows 3.1.05182-K9. And to install the Profile Editor, you simply grab this file and double click on it. And it says, ta-da! Welcome to the Profile Editor. So we'll click on Next. And it says, hey Keith, it looks like you already have this installed, which I do. So it's asking me if I want to modify it, repair it, or remove it. So in the case of a new install, it would ask you which components, which profile editors do you want to install. And the profile editors, there's lots of them. There's a profile editor for VPN policy. There's a profile editor for Network Access Manager, and more. So because I already have that installed, I'm not going to reinstall it. I also told it during the install that I wanted to go ahead and put the icons on my desktop. So here's my VPN profile editor here, and the Network Access Manager profile editor is here. And depending on your version of Windows, the Start button may or may not be there, but since this is Windows 7, if we click on Start and then go to All Programs, under Cisco, I've got the Cisco AnyConnect Profile Editor. If I select that, it gives me all the different profile editors here to choose from. And if during the install you didn't choose to install one or more of these profile editors, they wouldn't show up here if they weren't installed. So what we're after is the Network Access Manager Profile Editor right here. So we'll select that to launch it. And from here, there's just tons and tons of details that we can manipulate and set. And what I think would be a good idea, let's take an example of doing one specific task inside of the profile editor. And let's take a look at how we can add a new certificate authority as a trusted CA. And to do that, we'll go to the Network section of the Profile Editor for Network Access Manager. Here we currently have our wired entry. If we wanted to add a new entry, we could by clicking on Add. Now, inside the Network Access Manager from the client perspective, over here, they don't have the option. If they clicked on Manage Networks and they tried to edit or change the default wired profile, the options for removing or editing that default wired profile are grayed out. So what you and I might do is we might create our own custom wired profile, deploy that as part of our configuration for AnyConnect, and after it's all set up, that default wired profile might be all that our customers need to use. So it's in Profile Editor that we'd edit the details of that profile. So we'll click on Edit. So over here on the right, this is like the steps that we can go through. And we also have the Next button, which is going to take us through those steps. So as an example of certificates for user authentication, this tab right here is for user authentication. We can specify the method that we want to use. We can click on Next, and it takes us down to certificates. And by default, it's wanting to trust any root certificate authority installed on the operating system. We also have the option right here of adding a certificate authority's root certificate so that AnyConnect and its components, including Network Access Manager, could validate any certificate signed by that CA. So to do that, we'd click on the Include Root Certificate Authority Certificates, click on Add right here, and then we would browse to the location of that certificate. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a moment. I'm going to right click on Internet Explorer, and let's go over to our certificate server. And that's at 192.168.1.123/certserve. Now, another another interesting thing happened between this video and the previous one. I determined that I really wanted a domain controller for upcoming videos. So in the process of changing the role from our standalone Windows 2012 server to a domain controller, I had a little red flag that went up and said, sorry, you can't upgrade this. It's got Certificate Authority Services running. So what I had to do was remove Certificate Authority Services, upgrade it to a domain controller, and then reinstall Certificate Services as a domain controller. So even though we're going to the same URL that we did previously for our certificate services, this is actually a new CA service running on the now domain controller. And as a result, it has a brand new root certificate as part of it. So for this Windows machine, if we wanted to import a root certificate, we'd go to the CA server, which we have. We'd say I want to go ahead and download a Certificate Authority Certificate chain or CRL. So we'll click that link. And to download this, we can select the encoding as DER or base64. So let's grab DER. We'll click on Download CA Certificate. I'll tell my browser that I want to go ahead and save it as. Under Bob, Downloads, New Certs. And I've already previously done this. So here are the root certificates. I did it once with DER, and I did it one as base64. So there they are. There's the new root certificates with two different encoding methods. And that way I have them in either format ready to go. So now they're sitting on the file system of Bob's computer. The next thing we do is go back to our Network Access Manager profile editor. And at the point where it's asking for the actual root certificate, we'd simply go to that folder. We'll go to Bob. There's downloads. There's new certs. And it's currently looking for anything with an extension of PEM. Well, the reality is they don't have a PEM extension. So I'm going to say all files so I can see those two files that we just downloaded, which are both the root CA certificate, two different encoding methods, and I'm going to choose root CA base64. And if we click on next, it's going to go to pack files, and then if we click on next again, it'll take us to credentials. Again, you can skip around through these by using the menu at the right. So if we go down to credentials, we can say we want to prompt the user for credentials and never remember them, so they'll be prompted every time the authentication happens, or we can say remember while that user is logged on, or remember forever, which is not a good idea in a secure environment. And then we can click on Done. Now, regarding this profile, we'd want to go ahead and save it. So we'll say File, Save, and it'll put an XML extension on it. We'll click on Save. So now if we use that profile, any certificates issued by that certificate authority can be validated. Another way that we could bring in a brand new trusted certificate authority is natively through Windows. So we could go to Start. I'm going to type MMC for the Management Console. Press Enter. It says, do you want to go ahead and let Management Console make changes? I'm going to say yes, I brought it up. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to click on Add or Remove Snap-in. And I want to go to Certificates and click on Add. It's asking us if we wanted to manage certificates for my user account, the service account, or the computer account. Let's say the computer account. So we'll click on Next. And it's asking if we want to manage this computer or another computer. I'll say the local one. We'll click on Finish. And then we'll click on OK. So now we have in our management console the ability to manage certificates on the local computer. So if we expand that, and let me move this over just a little bit so we can see that. If we go to the Trusted Root Certificate Authorities and expand that, you'll notice that we have several certificate authorities that are pre-built in to this Windows 7 computer that it trusts. If we wanted to add a new certificate authority that it could go ahead and verify, we'd go to Certificates, right-click, go to All Tasks, and click on Import. meaning that I want to be able to import the root CA certificate for a CA that I want to be able to verify. So we'll click on Import. Welcome to the Import Wizard. We'll click on Next. We'll browse. We'll go to that New Certs folder. We'll go ahead and grab the Base 64 or DER. I think it'll go in either way. We'll click on Open. Click on Next. It's asking us where we're going to put it because we're currently looking at Trusted Root Certificate Authorities. That's where it's going to place it. We'll click on Next and we'll click on Finish. And it says the import was successful. So now if we look through this list, there we go right there. And if we want to look at the details of that cert, we could right click and say Open, or we could double click on that certificate. And it's valid from 2014 all the way to 2019. If we want to look at the details for that certificate, there's the issuer. If we scroll down a little bit, here's the public key portion that's contained in that digital certificate. And the public key of the CA is needed to verify the CA's signature on any certificates that CA has issued. For example, the one that's running on ICE. So in our case, because this is a brand new CA server, we'd also have to go back to our ICE server, download the root CA certificate to the ICE server, generate a new certificate signing request, and then request and get and install our own new identity certificate from that new CA server. In this video, we've taken a look at adding the Network Access Manager, a component of AnyConnect, as an 802.1x supplicant, as well as using the profile editor, also from Cisco, to modify the properties of our profiles in Network Access Manager, including the ability to add a trusted certificate authority using the profile editor. Our action items for this video are to lab it up. One of the recommendations I'd have for you is, although I love virtualization, I really do, in practicing and working with 802.1x, I would strongly recommend a physical switch and also a physical device here that has direct connection to a switch port. The rest can be virtualized. We can virtualize the ICE. We can virtualize the server running 2012 with Active Directory and certificate services, but as far as the 802.1x practice, I would recommend at least one physical device connected physically to one physical switch. I have had a great time in this video. I'm so glad you joined me for it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.